Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch the interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me. Hello and welcome to a special interview for The Wire. Widespread reports suggest that the authorities in Assam are implementing a policy of pushback to handle alleged illegal immigrants. As the name implies, they're being pushed back across the border into Bangladesh. Is this legal or does it contravene Indian laws and procedures? Is it primarily focused on members of the Muslim community? And how is it being treated by the courts? Those are the main issues I shall raise today with one of the most highly regarded senior advocates at the Supreme Court, Sanjay Hegde. Sanjay Hegde, there are multiple reports in newspapers and websites that since the third week of May, the government in Assam is implementing a policy of pushback to handle alleged illegal immigrants. As the name implies, they are being pushed back across the border into Bangladesh. Let me start by asking, is this legal or is it a breach of Indian laws and Indian established procedure?
I don't think it is legal. The term pushback actually comes from international law, and it implies that if there is somebody on your border who is trying to come in, you are perfectly entitled to push him back at that stage. We have seen all those videos of our people at the Mexico border trying to climb over the wall and get into the United States. So anybody or the United States and law enforcement could conceivably have pushed them back at that stage. But after somebody has come over the border or is alleged to have come over the border, after somebody has been subject to a process of law, there is nothing called pushback. You may be able to deport the person provided that the receiving country receives them. Again, to reference another video, you saw our people coming back from the United States in those aircraft. We were willing to receive them. And that is how a deportation takes place, when there is a receiving country which is willing to receive them.
You're making a very important distinction between pushback as it applies to people who are actually attempting at that moment to cross the border. You interrupt their attempt to cross the border, you push them back. That's legitimate and legal. It is part of international law. But once they've entered the country and are deemed to be illegal immigrants, you have to A, prove they're illegal, B, you have to go through a process of doing so, and C, then when you try and deport them, the receiving country has to be willing to accept them. You simply can't push back people who are already resident in your country. Is that the distinction?
Yes, that is exactly the distinction. And that is why you may have noticed that countries like the United States prioritize people who will self-deport. They're even willing to pay people's airfare, give them some money so that they leave the country voluntarily. Involuntary pushback after coming into the country is just not possible. In fact, it is downright illegal.
So, as per Indian law, it is illegal.
Indian law says that a foreigner who is found on your country will be sent back to the country of his or her origin. Again, that necessarily implies that that country will take him back through a process of law. Right now, I don't think this is accurately called pushback. It should be correctly called just throw out. And
But
that is what they're doing. They're throwing out people like chucking garbage over the neighbor's fence.
But the Indian law also requires that if you deem someone to be an illegal foreigner, an illegal immigrant, you have to first reasonably prove it in the eyes of the law that they are illegal. Only then can you begin deportation proceedings. You can't assume it. You can't do it if they have pending proceedings in court and circumvent those.
Absolutely. See, the basis of Indian law, as settled in the Menka Gandhi judgment, is that laws have to be just, fair, and reasonable. Now, we had what was called the Foreigners Act of 1946, under which most of these proceedings took place. The Foreigners Act was passed before independence, and that too to deal with the scare of the then scare of Germans and Japanese who were possibly be coming into the country as spies. And even under that law, you had to take the person to a tribunal. The person had to prove to the tribunal that he was in fact not a foreigner but an Indian. If the person did so, if the person could prove his case, he could stay in India. Otherwise, he would be sent back to the country of his origin.
Okay.
You had no problems identifying Germans or possibly Japanese. But in the Assam situation, where you are dealing with people who look like us, who are us, who shared the same country with us before 1947, you have a whole new degree of complexity.
Okay. Let me at this point raise something else. Last week, you attempted to move a petition before the Supreme Court regarding this matter, and that petition argued that the state, and I'm now quoting from your petition, has reportedly launched a sweeping and indiscriminate drive to detain and deport individuals suspected to be foreigners, even in the absence of foreigners' tribunal declarations, nationality verification, or exhaustion of legal remedies. Give me a sense of how serious the situation is and how many people, what's the order and size of the people affected?
The order and size of people affected can only be estimated. It is estimated that there are around 130,000 people who have declarations that they are not Indian citizens, and these declarations have come from the tribunals. But there are also cases of people where no such declarations exist. They're just suspected of being foreigners. And that is not necessarily confined to Assam. You've also had cases from Gujarat where there have been these anti-Bangladeshi drives, and there are rumors of them being held in other states as well. So, if the police were to pick you up and say, no, you do not appear to be Indian, you cannot prove to me that you're Indian, and then you just are taken into some place without any process of law, without coming up before a court, and then just pushed over the border, that certainly is not fair, just, and reasonable procedure which is required under the law.
Tell me, what was the Supreme Court's response to your petition?
The Supreme Court thought that we should not come to the Supreme Court directly under Article 32 of the Constitution, especially when there was a constitutional remedy available of approaching the High Court in Guwahati. So they allowed us to withdraw the petition with liberty to go to the High Court in Guwahati.
Okay. I take it you will be going to the High Court in Guwahati. That is a step you intend to take.
I assume my clients will be going to the High Court in Guwahati. I may or may not be appearing in the matter when it reaches the Guwahati High Court, because I primarily practice in Delhi.
Now, one of the cases that the Supreme Court has agreed to take up next week is that of Monowara Bewa. whose son, I believe, is an Indian citizen. She was declared a foreigner by the Foreigners Tribunal in 2016 and placed in detention. In 2019, she was released on bail by the Supreme Court. Since then, and this is the important part, she has filed a special leave petition challenging the tribunal's decision, which is pending with the Supreme Court. In other words, her legal remedies have not been exhausted. Yet, despite that fact, on the 24th of May, she was detained by the police, and no one knows thereafter where she is. Her neighbor, Jahanara Hussain, has told the Indian Express that she's received a Facebook video that purportedly shows Bewa in Bangladesh. If that's true, isn't this a gross violation both of laid down procedures as well as of the Supreme Court's authority?
Well, if I were arguing for the Assam government, I would possibly take the plea that there was no order protecting her from the Supreme Court. I think that is what. But the very fact that her proceedings had not culminated in the Supreme Court, that the matter was pending before the Supreme Court, tends to show that the government of Assam treats her as a foreigner, irrespective of her legal remedies. Now, Manovara Begum is one of the few who has actually approached the Supreme Court. Many, due to poverty, cannot even approach the High Court. These tribunals, which declare people as foreigners, operate under a kind of unique process. There have been members of the tribunal who have gone to the Guwahati High Court when their services were terminated, saying that they were terminated simply because they were not declaring enough people foreigners. Essentially, the tribunals were being told that any papers that these people produced were not to be believed, and there was an incentive almost for the tribunals to declare more and more people foreigners. So you mentioned the name Manovara Begum. The same Manovara, her name could have been different at different stages of her life. When she was a young girl, she could be Manovara Nisa. After marriage, she becomes Manovara Begum. And if, unfortunately, she happens to be widowed, she becomes Manovara Bewa. There have been cases like that. Now, how do you prove that it is the same Manovara? You have these tribunals operate under a system where the presumption is against the person who has got a notice.
You're making a very important point. You're saying that this judgment of the foreigners' tribunals, when they declare someone to be a foreigner and not an Indian citizen, are highly suspect. Worse still, there is an incentive on those who man the tribunals to actually increase the number of people they find foreigners, to disregard their papers, and that is also making the whole process further suspect. We have good reason to believe these are not always credible decisions.
Absolutely. The process is not only the punishment. The process is designed to punish. The process is designed to exclude more and more people from citizenship of the only land that they knew. Many of these people have been born in India, but they are unable to prove that their parents were in India before 25th of March 1971. Now, if you'll allow me, 25th of March 1971 is the cutoff under the Citizenship Act, which says that anybody who came over to India before that date in the state of Assam would be treated as an Indian citizen. This was after the Assam Accord. So most of these tribunals start issuing notices whenever the Election Commission found somebody to be a doubtful voter. They said that such and such a person, we are not sure whether he or she is an Indian or not. So then the process is that they try to show that, look, my father was here before 1971. his name is on the voters list, or either before 1971 or before 1966. Again, the same problem that I told you about Manowara Begum Nisa Beva. Similar problems also arise with fathers' names.
Absolutely. Let me interrupt that point and put this to you because I'm broadening the discussion and I'm using Monowara Beva as an illustration or an example. These are people who claim to be Indian citizens, may well be Indian citizens, but simply don't have the documents to prove it. They're poor. Many of them are illiterate or very poorly educated. Most importantly of all, they live in areas where their homes are often affected by floods and their worldly goods are frequently simply washed away. In these circumstances, is it fair to deem that they are not Indian just because the critical documents are not available? Particularly when they have often husbands, sons, or parents who are accepted as Indians. They seem to be the solitary people in the family who are being excluded. Is that fair?
Well, the law is not always fair. And there are many who will argue that the law may be hard, but it is the law. And the current law, till the new amendment, which is even worse, of the new Foreigners Act of 2025, has worked disproportionately against the poor and the undocumented. Look, Karan, we both of us come from families who have had graduates and postgraduates from the grandfathers downwards. But even many of us would possibly have problems if we had to document the schools that our fathers and grandfathers went to, and to show that it was the same name and it was the same person.
Absolutely. The truth is that if I didn't have a passport, I'm not 100% sure I could prove that I'm an Indian. I don't have a birth certificate. I'm not even sure if there was one given to my parents when I was born in 1955. My parents are dead. I'd have to rely on third parties to verify my status. Why can't that be accepted in the case of people like Monowara Beva? If her son is Indian, why can't we assume the mother must be Indian as well?
Well, that would be a reasonable assumption to make, but that is not how the law currently operates, nor have people paid much attention to the law as it is operated in the state of Assam. And there is a fallout of this. I've happened to deal with these problems of citizenship even when I was sent to Shaheen Bagh as an interlocutor. And I could see out there that people who were protesting the Citizenship Amendment Act had been greatly influenced by the way that people had been excluded from citizenship, people who had been put into detention camps at that stage. And now when they see that people are being pushed across the border for want of papers, I am not sure what kind of reaction we are eliciting. A local problem which is confined to Assam should not be allowed to become an all India problem. And that is my fear.
Let's just focus on that local problem in Assam. Chief Minister Himanta Biswa Sharma says it's only people declared foreigners by foreigners tribunals who are in danger of being pushed across the border. You've actually told me in an earlier answer in this interview that quite often people who haven't been declared foreigners by foreigners tribunals but are only suspected of being not Indian are being pushed across. So clearly, first of all, when the chief minister says it's only people declared by foreigners tribunals to be foreigners, he's not accurate, he's not telling the truth. But more importantly, and this is the question I want to ask you, is this a way of getting around the fact that Bangladesh is unwilling to accept they are Bangladeshis and therefore let them into Bangladesh is pushback, i.e., literally physically forcing them across the border, pushing them across the border, a way around the fact that Bangladesh otherwise won't accept them?
Well, yes, that is exactly it. And just while you were asking me this question, it did occur to me that this is the same kind of thinking which goes beyond what is lawful, the same kind of thinking which justifies encounters in various other circumstances is being used here. The inarticulate major premise is that the law may say anything, but we have the power and we are going to enforce it. Maybe on the poor, maybe on the powerless, but if they appear to be a problem here, or if action against them is likely to bring us political dividends, then let's just do it.
But
Let's just push them across.
this is then clearly abuse of power and breach of law. It's both.
Absolutely. I doubt that in the ultimate analysis, a constitutional court will uphold what has happened. And you see, the foreigners' tribunals can declare all kinds of people as foreigners. But a declaration of the tribunal that you have been unable to prove your Indian citizenship does not ipso facto make you a citizen of any other country. You may say that.
Absolutely. You have come to the point where I need to ask you another question. What happens when these people are pushed across the border and if Bangladesh refuses to accept them? Are they then stranded, perhaps forever, in some no man's land between the two countries? Because we say in India, you're not Indian. The Bangladeshis say you're not a Bangladeshi. We're pushing them across the border. There's only that bit of no man's land which they can occupy. What happens to them thereafter?
You have seen videos of people stuck in no man's land. You also had that famous instance of the Iranian in a Paris airport terminal who lived out his life and died in that terminal because he did not have a passport. He could not be sent back to Iran, nor was France willing to take him in. So, how long can you keep them indefinitely in no man's land? And mind you, there have been instances where they've not been allowed to be in no man's land. They've just been got rid of.
When you say got rid of, killed?
Let's leave it at that. I've heard instances where they've just disappeared. So the point is that it is perfectly legitimate for border defense forces to kill intruders. They can be smugglers, they can be anyone. So if you push people off without due process, you are running that risk as well, that they can be just eliminated as intruders.
Let me underline that because I think it's a very important point you're making. When India pushes people we deem to be illegal, who I'll add may often simply not be able to prove they're Indian, but may well be Indian. It's just that they can't prove it. When you push such people across the border into Bangladesh, in the eyes of the Bangladesh border police and authorities, they are intruders into the country. They are not citizens that they're welcoming back, and they could be liable to be shot. That is how intruders into a country are often treated. I'm just underlining that because I think it's a very important point. Our pushback policy could amount to certain death for those we're pushing back. And those people could still be Indian citizens. It's just that they can't prove it. They haven't got the documents. They're too poor. Their houses have been affected by floods. They are often illiterate. Fate has worked against them. It doesn't mean they're not Indian.
Karan, if I can interrupt you for a minute. It just occurred to me about a case that I had done. There were two people who were called Kismat and Ashraf, who were declared to be foreigners by a tribunal, and we had filed a special leave petition in the Supreme Court. This was because a former colonel in Pune, found that his maid was related to them, and he sent us this case. What happened was that the Supreme Court then even sent the CBI to examine their nationality. And the CBI found that, as a matter of fact, they were children of poor migrants from Uttar Pradesh and Bihar. And the CBI came back with that report. And it was after that that they were released. So all kinds of people who the Assamese authorities assume to be foreigners may be foreign to Assam, or their parents may have been foreign to Assam, but they very well may have roots in India itself.
Let me at this point quote from a recent article by NewsClick. It says, these operations appear to target Muslim communities, undermining India's secular fabric. Is this specifically or predominantly targeted at Muslims?
It is de jure not targeted at Muslims, because there have been Hindus also who have come across the border, and there are a few Hindu cases. But the vast majority of these cases before the foreigners' tribunals are of Muslim origin, because there is, again, an unstated premise that if you speak Bengali, if you look visibly Muslim and are within Assam, then it is likely that you are not somebody from Assam, but it is you are somebody who is pejoratively called Mia, and Mias originate from Bangladesh. That is the general line of thinking out there.
And this overlooks critical bits of our history, such as, just to take one example, prior to independence, Sylhet was part of Assam. It was majority Muslim. Those were Assamese people at the time. If they happen to be living in Assam today, it doesn't mean they're Bangladeshis. They're Indians. They were Indians earlier. They're Indians still today. All of that is being overlooked here, isn't it?
Oh, plenty of it is being overlooked. You know, people whose grandfathers just migrated 50 kilometers within the same country, within the same undivided country. Some of them can become Bangladeshi, and some of them can become Indians. But once people stay on in a particular land and owe allegiance to that land, it is very, very difficult to say that no, the land at which your ancestors 3 generations prior came in now falls within Bangladesh or now falls within India, and hence you are Indian or hence you are Bangladeshi. Now just assume the reverse. Supposing Bangladesh were to say that, look, your great-grandfather's place now happens to be in India. Now let me push people across. Would that be acceptable? No.
Let me end by putting this to you. Many of these people, not all by any stretch of imagination, but maybe I should say a few of these people, not many, a few of these people have filed special leave petitions in high courts, in Supreme Courts. In many instances, those special leave petitions are still to be heard. Their answers are still awaited. Do these people have rights under our Constitution? And is the Supreme Court upholding them, or is it trying to avoid doing so?
Well, I've appeared in many of these petitions, and I find the process to be rather episodic. Sometimes there are judges who say, look, 2 courts have gone into it. This court will not interfere under our discretionary jurisdiction. There are other judges who say, okay, I might look into it, but I will not protect you in the meanwhile. And then there are judges who say, yes, this is citizenship, this is important. So till I look into it, you, Mr. State, do nothing. So there is no one rule in the Supreme Court.
It's even worse. It all depends upon the whims and caprices of individual judges.
And the ability of individual lawyers. So it is, as the Supreme Court itself said about the death penalty, it is a lethal lottery.
Absolutely. And it's a lethal lottery that, just like the death penalty, ends up affecting the life of the person concerned. You may be born in India, you may have all your life been Indian, but because you don't have the documents to prove it, and I'll underline once again, if I was challenged and I didn't have a passport, I'm not sure I could prove it. That lottery, in your instance, will go against you. You'll be pushed across the border, And who knows, you might even be shot to death by the Bangladeshis as an intruder. I thank you, Sanjay Hegde, for having agreed to speak about this subject, which sadly, regrettably, hasn't got the attention in the media that it deserves. I think you may have awakened the conscience of the country to a terrible injustice that is happening, and happening, it may well be the case, to people who are fellow citizens, not to people who are outsiders and aliens. I thank you for the time you've given me. Take care. Stay safe.
Hi, I'm Karan Thapar. Over the last few years, I hope you've been watching my program, The Interview on the Wire. During that period, I've interviewed doctors, politicians, businessmen, scientists, authors, and even the occasional Nobel laureate. For me, it's been exciting. I hope it's been enjoyable for you. But these, as you know, are tough times, and if this program is going to remain bold, independent, and sometimes even defiant, then I think we need your support. At the end of the day, it's a truism, but editorial independence is best defended by the viewers. So if you would like this program to remain the way it is, forthright, outspoken, and interesting, then would you consider supporting us? All you have to do is to click on the description at the bottom. But more than anything else, I hope you will continue to watch The Interview. Your viewership means an awful lot to me.